All right, let's get to the phones. Let's go to Meg in Pensacola. Hey, Meg, what's going on?
Hey, I'm so happy to talk to you, and I just want you to know that whatever chaos y'all are dealing with there today, it really put me at ease to hear it happening in the background. So thank you,
Meg,
for
listen.
pushing through.
What you guys hear, what you hear on a finished podcast is so thoroughly edited. I'm like a terrible driver, and they'll send me driving for 2.5 hours. And then they will snip like 11 minutes of that drive and make it look like everybody's having a peaceful time in the car. So I'm not a great driver.
Great.
So listen, we're all having a rough go of it. So it's good to talk to you. So what's up, man? How can I help?
So my question is, at its core, should I be doing more to protect my young daughter from unhealthy ideas about food and body image? Or maybe is this something where I'm kind of overreacting because of my own history with body insecurity?
Whoa.
The
So, hey, hold on.
Yeah.
I've got a young daughter. I've got my own body dysmorphia issues. I've got my own. Yeah, man, you are reading my mail on this one. So, walk me through. Tell me about your journey here. Tell me what's going on. I know this has probably got a specific issue you're dealing with.
Yeah, so I have a 2-year-old daughter, so she's very young.
Okay.
And the context is my husband and I moved back up to live close to my family last year, and we embarked on this crazy journey of buying a house and remodeling it while we're living in it because we're nuts.
Yeah.
So while we're doing that, my family has very kindly stepped in to help us with childcare. So right now, my grandmothers are basically providing day-to-day care for my daughter, and I work remotely, so I go with her to their house every day while they babysit. So that's kind of the situation that we're in. But the background is that I've struggled with body image issues as long as I can remember. I think I started dieting when I was 11 or 12.
Who gave you that message?
It's very much part of the kind of like women in my family. There's one of my grandmothers in particular that I would kind of label like the matriarch of our family, has a very strong voice when it comes to what fatness means and what certain foods are about, like the morality of how you eat, foods being good and bad, and people being good and bad as a result of what they eat.
Right.
So that was a big trope. And I have some really vivid memories of being a kid and it just like it hitting home. Like I remember sitting in a Captain D's, like eating, like fried fish and French fries as you do. And my grandmother pointing out a person across the way who was really heavy and basically commenting on how disgusting it was to watch them eat when they were eating the same food that I was eating.
Gotcha.
And then like in the second breath, like telling me to go get a refill of my Coke, to get my money's worth. So just that kind of contradictory message about food, where food is something that we, my family uses to love people with. They want to cook for you. They want to bake for you. That's how we show love and how we celebrate things. But it's also how we punish ourselves, I think, and how we, it sort of has become like a moral code. You express your ability to like your self-control, by not eating certain things.
So I just want to stop you there. You just articulated, I think, one of the great mysteries / great challenges of our time. And we've watched it with COVID. We've watched it with weight issues. We've watched it with health issues. We've watched it with religious and morality issues, which is, how do you hold on to something that has hurt or damaged people and not throw the whole thing away at the same time, right?
Exactly.
How to not go to war with it. So the irony of sitting in a Captain D's, which, man, I can get sideways in a Captain D's, but there is no vegetarian or keto version of you go to Captain D's to destroy your soul, right? That's why you go there.
Absolutely.
And when you're in there, what you're doing isn't great. And so instantly your body goes to war to make sure you can feel safe in that environment. And so you have to point out others, right? You got to point out thems, and you've got to create a space between you and them. You know what you're doing is stupid, but at least it's not that, right? And we do that everywhere. So it sounds like your grandmother is dealing with her own demons all the time. And she does what we all do, which is make sure she can have some psychological space between her and everybody else. And how you do that, you teach your kids and you teach your grandkids, right? That they, whoever they is not us, right? Man, that's hard. And now you're what? You're watching it happen to your 2-year-old.
Yeah, kind of. So I'm starting to see, because I'm actually in the house where she's being taken care of, and I don't want to like pinpoint this one grandmother as it's a cultural idea.
So
in the South,
let me tell you this. And one of my favorite, most extraordinary people in my life was my grandmother. Literally on her deathbed, she is taking her last breaths, right? In a bed that she got in a hospital and never came out of.
Yeah.
She had lost her sight. She was in constant pain, and I went to visit her, and she was a hilarious lady, always telling jokes, always clowning on people. It's where I got my sense of, like, she's a riot. But I'm holding her hand. She's looking up. I'll never forget this. And she said, "Hey, I know you can't see me under this sheet. I haven't weighed I haven't had this weight since high school."
Oh my God.
And you know what I mean? And that machine, that engine was still running. Like, yeah. Hey, I'm my body's wasting away, but man, you should see the number on that scale, right? So it's not your grandmother. It is in the air we breathe, right?
Right.
I can work out like crazy, do all the right things, and then I walk by the mirror and I'm like, really? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, exactly. I'm with you 100%. So absolutely not on your grandmother, but at the same time, how do we not let our kids like breathe this poisonous air and at the same time be grateful for the folks that taught us how to breathe, right?
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, she's bending over backwards to help me right now. She's feeding my daughter during the day, which I'm grateful for. And so I love her. I'm grateful for her, but I'll hear bits and pieces of things that remind me of like all the stuff that I've spent the last, I don't know, however many years picking apart and trying to like reconcile with, being spoken to my daughter or.
Give me an example of that.
So something like, so she was actually talking to me, but my daughter was in the room. So one day she brought lunch for us and she made a cobbler. And I don't mean, she didn't make me like a ramekin of cobbler. She made an entire sheet pan of cobbler.
Like a bathtub. Right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
As you should make cobblers, but go ahead.
As one does, right. And she said, all right, now you have to take this home with you today. And I said, oh, man, I really don't need to take it home. And she said, yes, you have to. And I said, no, ma'am, I really shouldn't have that much sugar. And she looked at me and said, well, you're just going to have to learn some self-discipline. As she's handing me this cobbler. And my daughter's sitting there eating, in her high chair. And I know that she's not reading the subtext of that yet. But things like.
So here's what your daughter's reading. Okay. And this is, I think this is the way forward for you here. Okay. Your daughter, you're right, is not picking up. She'll hear the word self-discipline. She'll absorb that, right? And there's a consequence to that. And there's actually some truth to that. And that's where the whole thing gets so messy. There is some self-discipline. And how do you balance self-discipline with hospitality and with morality and values? All of that gets messy. What your daughter's going to absorb literally into her gene expression, literally into her physiology and chemistry, is the tension, is the mom's whole essence, energy. Everything about mom just got tense when she held this cobbler. Everything got tense in this relationship between grandmother and my mom. Does that make sense? That's what she'll absorb. And then what will happen is she will begin to create her own narratives as to why there is tension, right? Some of it will be clear to her because it's about food. Some of it will be clear to her about A and B and C. And then some of it she'll just make up, right? So when you've got a 2-year-old who's just eating and being fed, great. If you hear your grandmother, which she probably won't, tell a 2-year-old, honey, I'm going to put a pizza there on the floor. We don't eat pizza, right? She's not going to do that to a 2-year-old. So some of this you're going to have to recognize is your demons that you're bringing to this conversation,
totally.
right? Some of this is, and that's where you got to make sure that you're not passing that on to your daughter, your angst through grandmother, right?
Yeah.
Some of this is going to be, you say, hey, thank you for this cobbler. Thanks. And you take it because how old's your grandmother? 70, 80, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to go to war over this. I'm going to take the cobbler. I'm going to put it in the trash. I'm not going to eat it, right? I will show you I'll show you self-discipline. I'm going to take it out and put it in the garbage, right?
Yeah.
And we're not going to have any more conversations about it. If that's, this is going to sound weird, if that's the way to show your grandmother respect in a moment and also uphold your values and what you know to be right about the way you need to sleep and take care of your body, so be it, right?
Yeah.
And if she comes back and says, 2 weeks later, did you eat that whole cobbler? You can say, no, ma'am, I couldn't finish that whole cobbler. Like, I've got to have self-discipline. And then the conversation's over. She doesn't have to know that discipline for you meant putting it in the trash, right? So you do the things that keep you well, and those things, some would call that peacekeeping, and that's a whole other conversation, right? I call that just being respectful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if my grandmother, let's say, made a joke about those guys that drink beer, like, well, that's just those trashy guys that drink beer, I might just smile. I might say, grandmother, it's not because of the beer. I'm not going to then launch into a tirade about how I don't think drinking beer is bad, and I have beer with my, does that make sense? Like, so there's just those boundaries, right? I think for you, the biggest impact you can make on your daughter is how you interact with food, how you interact with her, how you interact with self-discipline in your home when it's y'all too. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's going to be hard because my guess is you're still healing. I still am healing. Most of the people who have had challenges with food, with body image, are on a forever healing journey. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And then I'll tell you this one hard boundary. There is going to come a season when your grandmother's going to say something that you got to step in on with your kid. When it comes to food, when it comes to body image, you're going to have to step in on that. Yeah. And that may mean you end up with different child care. And so to answer your original question, yeah, there may come a moment. And I think it's important for you and your husband to have those boundaries pre-established because it's real easy for them to go one way or the other, to where you get super militant over things that aren't that big a deal, stuff that's triggering you from your childhood, and where you just kind of let the next thing go and the next thing go and the next thing go, right? And then it hasn't come out yet, but a show's going to come out. My son was with a couple of friends in a drive-thru. A dad took them all out to a baseball game. It was incredible. And my son was in a drive-thru, and he took him to McDonald's. And then that night, I didn't know that. That night, I said, hey, man, what'd you have for dinner? And he said, oh, nothing. I just had a couple of French fries. I was like, why? Y'all didn't eat? I gave you some money. And he said, yeah, but we went to McDonald's, and I told him I just couldn't support that. And I was like, dude, have a burger, man. You're out with your buddy. You know what I mean? And so that told me I've hit the pendulum too far, right? That's crazy. And so all that to say is that's my stuff that now I'm passing along to him, right?
Right.
And so it's just finding that sweet balance. I think the most important thing is to have that conversation with your husband, with yourself, with a counselor outside of this home so you know where your boundaries are. And then know, this is when I'm bringing drama on to my family that is my own stuff, and this is when I really need to step in. And that line is just unfortunately different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I do love that you're looking out for your daughter. The bigger thing is going to be, in my opinion, maybe I'm crazy. The bigger opinion for me is going to be media consumption. What are these pictures? What are these images that are going to communicate to my daughter what beauty is not? Are they going to hear language like, oh, that person's less than, that person disgusts me? Those are the kind of things that deeply imprint, deeply wire into a child, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things to be careful of. If you hear that kind of nonsense at a table, that's when, like when you're out to dinner, I will, and I have said, hey, we're not going to do that. And I've overrode those kind of comments with family members, with people I love. Because they're not trying to be ugly. This just becomes jokes and silly, and we're just being fun. I'm just poking around. And I need everybody to make sure, And I'm communicating to my kid. Sometimes people are going to say things that are going to hurt your feelings or that are going to be inappropriate. And here's how you stand up to that. Gently, respectfully, but directly too, right? And you're getting free childcare. And I know that makes this whole thing super, super messy. Super messy. It's hard to put a price on your values. It's hard to put a price on your morality. And I know that makes this whole thing so complicated. Rest assured you're a good mom. I'm just proud of you for even having the thoughts in the conversation. Sometimes self-discipline looks like smiling and saying thank you and then putting it in the trash. Ugh. It's so messy.